everybody, welcome back. And today we're going to be doing my January palette rankings. Now I know this is big, ranking videos are like a big thing. I know Kelsey Brianna Jai started them. I love her. I'm going to link her channel down below. But I can't remember if it was Brit Clarke or Karen Harris, which I'll link both their channels down below as well, said that they were not going to just focus on doing the new palettes they purchased, but also just any palette they used. Because if you're like me, if you're a collector or if you're just somebody who doesn't buy makeup that often and you have older palettes in your collection, I like to talk about the other palettes that I have, because I always say this about limited edition items, older items, somebody somewhere has them. So while I do want to focus on new palettes this year, or not new ones, but relatively new palettes and trying out new things, I also want to talk about the older things in my collection that I use, because I do use them. So now that I have let you know where I got this idea, and I apologize, I know this is a little late, but for January I used 13 palettes. Yeah, 13 palettes. So we're gonna just go from worst to best. And yeah, if you wanna see my palette rankings for January 2021, then stick around. All right, guys, the first palette I used that I want to talk about that was absolutely not my favorite, and I did a first impression tutorials on this, and this is the Wet n Wild Lights Off. I think I called it Lights Out. It's actually Lights Off palette. I wanted to like this so bad. I like the color story. I really like the look I got out of it, but it's just so underwhelming for Wet n Wild and what I know they can do. I was really disappointed in this. I had to work really hard for these shadows, and like I said in that video, you know, the whole narrative of, well, drugstore makeup is good for the drugstore, you get what you pay for. It's just not going to cut it anymore, because there's so many good drugstore affordable brands out there that this was just, I'm not a fan. You know, will I reach for it again? Maybe, maybe not. Is this something that's probably going to end up being decluttered? Yeah, so, but yeah, if you want to see that tutorial and my full thoughts on this palette, I'll link it down below or put a card up here or something so you can go check that out. So that was number 13. So from here on out, I like all of these palettes. I just kind of ranked them on the ones I liked more. So the second palette I want to talk about is another affordable / drugstore palette, and that is the Revolution Makeup, the Emily Edit, the Wants palette. And I do want to clarify something, because when I did my palette collection like a year or two ago, I said something when I was talking about this palette about, I heard there was some controversy, and I think sometimes people just like controversy for controversy's sake. And somebody came back and let me know, oh, well, no, there was issues with mold in the palette, and that's serious. And I was like, oh my god, yes, that is. I hadn't heard about that. I was talking about just the fact that some people don't like the pigmentation. So if you watch that video and I say, oh, just controversy for controversy's sake, I am not referencing the mold. From what I understand, they recalled all those palettes, redid it, and handled it as I would expect them to do. So when I made that comment, it was just because people don't like the pigmentation in this palette. And like I said in that, you know, in my collection video, this is what I would expect from Emily Noel. So I am very happy with this palette. It's colorful, but it's a softer, less pigmented, more approachable, beginner-friendly type of color. You're not going to get crazy looks out of this, but you're going to get soft, beautiful, blended looks. I like the quality of this palette. I don't have a problem with the blending or the shimmers. Again, they're not going to be something that like knock your socks off, but I mean, they're very serviceable. You know, if you're just looking for something with a little bit of color, but you want to keep it toned down, which if you're like me, sometimes you have to pick palettes purposefully that will not allow you to get that crazy. So if you're somebody like me where you see makeup and you just want to put everything on your face, you want the cut crease, you want the glitter, you want the lashes, because you know you are internally, you were just wanting to unleash your inner drag queen. I totally understand that. And that's on days like that I reach for this kind of palette when I'm like, you're just going out, you know, to the office. You're just going grocery shopping. You don't need glitter and 15,000 eyeshadows on your eye. And that's when I reach for this palette. So I like this palette. It's not my favorite. It is something I reach for, I would say probably once every few months, but I know it's not everybody's favorite. You're not going to get the craziest pigmentation out of it, but I like this palette. So that is number 14. We're only doing 13. That's number 12. Counting down, not up, Heather. Good job. Number 11 is going to be the Profusion Cosmetics The Chocolates palette. Mine is beat up. I really like this palette as well. It's got a brush in here that's going to fall out, so we're just going to take that out. Now, I bought this palette a couple of years ago when I was really lusting for the Natasha Denona Gold palette, which I picked up, by the way. No regrets. No regrets. But I love this palette. It is a complete palette for me. You have some lighter brow bone shades, some transition shades, and some deeper shades. Now, if you are a deeper skin toned individual, it's probably going to be harder to find some transition shades in here because these are kind of, some of these shades are more conducive to fairer skin tone. So just be forewarned. It has this pretty, like, kind of almost pressed chunky glittery shade in here, which is actually really pretty. The mattes in here are nice. I mean, the shimmers in here are nice. Again, they're not going to be like crazy blinding, but they're really pretty. They work for me, and I really enjoy this palette. And it's one of those palettes that doesn't look like much in swatches at all. Like the swatches just look like meh. But once you get it on the eye, it's really, really pretty. And I really like the formula of this palette. Again, not a crazy in your face, whoa, you know, you've got metallic eyeshadow on your eyes, but just a really nice, pretty serviceable palette. And I think I paid like $5 or $7 for this. So yeah, that is number 11. I've been reaching for that quite a bit lately too. So apparently I've been needing to tone myself down. All right, number 10 is by Colourpop, and it's a Star Wars and The Mandalorian The Child palette. Now, I wore this palette, and I'm gonna say I like this palette a lot. Apparently, I dug my fingers into that brown shade. Some bitch, that sucks. Which I have not used that brown shade yet, and I need to. And the reason why this one is ranking so low is because I have only used it once, and I seem to have some trouble with Float Your Crib. Is that what that says? Float Your Crib, this shade right here. Because I used, I used this in the inner corner, this on the lid, this was my transition, and then Float Your Crib I used in my crease, and for some reason it didn't want to stay in my crease. So I don't know if that was just me, if I was just having a funky makeup day. I liked the look I got, and the mattes blend out really, really pretty and really nicely. So I just want to get in there and kind of use the rest of this palette and create another look and really form an opinion on it. The Force color, I know some people don't like these pressed glitter shades, but I think those are really pretty. You know me, guys, I don't mind working a little bit harder for a shadow. That brown is beautiful. If it, you know, has a pretty color on the eye, this palette's already a mess. So really pretty color scheme. I really love just the overall look of this palette. Like I said, had a little bit of trouble with the shade, but I'm excited to dig back into it, but it's just ranking so low because I've only used it once, and I had that issue with Float Your Crib. Number 9 is another palette I just did a tutorial with, and that is the Lorac Vintage Glamour palette. I really enjoyed this palette. This palette's ranking lower for me because it is just not a complete palette for me. It is not, I don't have the brow bone shade that I need. That's just because I'm translucent. If you are deeper than me by even a hair, this is gonna be fine for you. But also these shades right here, I like the way they look on the eye. They're that kind of, these are those kind of chunky, shimmery, flaky shades that you really have to wet down and kind of pack onto the eye. The shimmers in here, they've got some really pretty shimmers, but I just don't feel like it's like classic Lorac quality. They're not bad at all. The mattes in here are really pretty. I really like the Sunset shade especially. I think that's such a unique kind of cool tone reddy brown. But I mean, it's like a reddy brown, but it's cool. I really like that shade. And again, I like the sequin shade. I like the bubbly shade, the chiffon shade. It's just it's not what I'm used to from Lorac, but it still works really well. And I think you can get some really beautiful looks in here, day or night. Matte shimmer, you could really go over the top and vamp it up. It's just, I don't know. It's just not what I was expecting, and I had to work a little bit harder to get some of those sequiny shades to work, so that is why it is coming in number 9. Now, if you're interested in this palette, again, I'll either put my tutorial in the card or I'll link it down below. I liked it. I like the look. I'm excited to play with this palette a little bit more. Just be aware, it's got some quirks that I'm not used to coming from Lorac. All right, the next palette coming in at number, what are we? Number 8 is the Lorac Luxe Diamond palette. Now, this is not a palette a lot of people talked about. I think this was their holiday release like in 2019 maybe. But I love this palette. I think it is so stinking pretty. I will say it has some of those chunky glittery shades in it, but it's got such beautiful shimmers and mattes in here. This is the kind of quality that I have come to know and love from Lorac. It's got these deep shimmers that are gorgeous. This ruby shade is beautiful. It's got just it does have some of those chunky shades in there, but it's got so many beautiful mattes and their shimmer shades that are just stunning that I just love. So, you know, this palette, it kind of flew under the radar, I feel like, for a lot of people, but I really like it, and I like it. That ruby shade especially. Let me just swatch all these. That ruby shade especially is so gorgeous, and it's so beautiful on the eye. And I think you can really do something romantic or vampy with this palette. I tend to go with a little bit more of a smoky look with this palette just because these bottom 2 rows are I just feel like that's the vibe of this palette. So yeah, not a palette that a lot of people talked about, but it is in my collection and I do reach for it from time to time. And when I reach for it, I really enjoy the look. So that is number 8. All right, guys. Ooh. Coming at number 7 is the Profusion Citrine palette. Guys, this palette is brand new and it is already so, that's the one thing about this Profusion packaging is it just gets so dirty so fast. Again, I did a tutorial and first impression on this palette and I really like this palette. I think this is beautiful. And I did talk about some things in that, in that tutorial where I think if you are a deeper skin tone, you're going to have to bring in some things to deepen it up if you want to. I really like that this palette kind of can just give you a beautiful kind of blown out look with a little bit of definition. Again, I am translucent, so take that with a grain of salt. Like, it doesn't even get too deep on me. So if you are of a deeper skin tone, I think some of these gold shades would be absolute, or these kind of orangey and gold shades would be absolutely beautiful on you. You just might need to bring some things in to help it along. But I love this palette. I love the quality of it. Super blendable. Was really, really impressed. And I'm excited to try some of the other new Profusion palettes that I've picked up. All right, guys, y'all ready for a blast from the past? I can't let go of you. I don't know how to quit you, Urban Decay Vice palette. So coming in at number 6 is my Urban Decay Vice palette. It is so dirty, guys. This thing is so old. One day, and I was like, I want to put some craziness on my eyes. And I went in, and I think I went straight for Chaos and Unhinged. Love it. I still love this palette. It still performs beautifully. I know it's old as dirt. People are like, you shouldn't use that. Guys, I sanitize my eyeshadows. You know, I don't use them on anybody else. Let me live my life. I love this palette. This was a Urban Decay Vice palette that was 100% a complete palette for me because I had my brow bone shade, I had my transition shade, I have kind of some deeper shades in here. Plus you've got all of these fun, funky, fun colors. I love this palette. I love you. I wish Urban Decay. This is the Urban Decay that we all want. I don't know why my palette is so dirty, but it is. So just ignore that. All right, so we are getting into the top 5. Guys, there's a lot of Lorac this year. I mean, this year. Well, yeah, so far this year, so far this month, but I just love it. And that is the Lorac Mega Pro. This is the original. Again, I love this palette. I know it's kind of looking washed out in my lights. There is a lot of light shades in this palette, but it is a lot more depth than what you're seeing on camera. So I apologize for that. I just love this palette, guys. If you want to know, when did I wear this palette? I was wearing this palette when I did my first wig haul. So I used this palette to create that look. I love this palette. I just think it's so good. It's still so good. Guys, you know I'm ride or die for Lorac. I still reach for these. I love my Mega Pros. I love my my Pros. I love my Unzip palettes. I just love Lorac. So yeah, this is one I still reach for. Yeah, it's still a favorite. I still use it. I still love it. All right, guys, another palette from a brand that I was on my list of brands to try, and that is the Lunar Beauty Moonspell. And I gotta say, when I get these palettes in my hand, they feel so luxe. They're not super thin palettes, but I love the packaging. I love them. So I only used this once, and I used this row up here to create a purpley look, and it's a mess. It's a mess already. But this is so pretty. This is so pretty. Again, it's another one where like, you know, kind of like the look. And by the way, if you want to see the look that's on my eyes, I filmed it. It will be up shortly. But these are just beautiful. I mean, I'm just so super impressed with this palette. I can't wait to dig into those greens, but just, they don't swatch like much, but guys, I usually don't look at swatches. Like whenever I see swatches that are like super perfect intense and all stenciled out, I'm like, yeah, let me want to see it on my eye first. And I've got to say, these just performed so beautifully on the eye. And the reason why this one is coming in at number 4 is just because I've only used it once. Super impressed with this palette. I really like the look that I got out of it, and I'm very impressed so far. I'm excited. Let me know if you guys want to see like a look from this one. I know it been there, done that, you know, everybody's done looks on that one, but you know. Next palette, okay, coming at number 3, guys, this is an oldie and a goodie, and I'm sorry if you never got this palette, but I love this palette. I love this palette still. I wore this palette a week and a half ago. Love it. It's the Master Palette by Mario from Anastasia Beverly Hills. It's the best palette they've ever come out with. Why this palette is not permanent, I do not know. Oh, and there goes the brush. Whatever, we'll deal with it. I love it. I love this palette. I don't know what else to say. Everybody said it. It's so creamy. It's so buttery. It is so beautifully flattering on a variety of textures and skin tones. I just think this palette is just... If you have more mature skin, this formula is beautiful. I do not understand why this palette is not permanent. I don't understand. I feel like for a lot of people, this is like a holy grail palette. And for me as well, it's just so good. And I hate using it because I don't want to, not that I'm ever going to hit like major pan on any palette because I have so many, but guys, I've got some serious dips in some of these shades, and I love it. And I still bring it out and use it because it's just so good. It's so good. Number two is I love this palette. Every time I go to my Juvia's Place drawer, I either grab for this palette or I have to force myself not to grab for this palette. And this is the Tribe by Juvia's. I believe they took this away for a while and then they brought it back. This is such a gorgeous palette. I love it. Whenever I wear this palette, I get so many compliments. I don't even know what to say. I just love this palette. I love the green shade. I love Masai. I love as an inner corner, like highlight shade. Tootsie, I love wearing this all over my eye. You know, San, great deepening shade. And then I'll just throw on whichever shimmer shade I feel like throwing on. It's usually Kuba or it's Koro, that multi-chrome, I don't know, it's multi-chrome, duochrome. I mean, it's just... This palette is so good. If you were to get one Juvia's Place palette, I think it would be this one. I just think they're fabulous. I love that palette. Number 1 palette for the month of January is another Lunar Beauty palette, and it is the Greek Goddess palette. First of all, packaging is gorgeous on this. Guys, I'm in love with this palette. It is so good. I have used every shade in here, and there is not a dud. I will say with Nemesis, like with many shades like this, these blue shades, it does benefit from the help of a base. It's got such a pretty turn to it. It's got such a pretty turn. It's kind of like that purpley blue to red, but this is just so good. I mean, I have absolutely no complaints about this palette. It wears beautifully all day. The mattes blend gorgeously. The shimmers on here are stunning. I mean, I've got nothing bad to say about this palette. I was like, oh, I could do a full review, but one, it's been out for forever. And two, I mean, there's nothing, I have nothing bad to say about this palette. Love it. Love, I think my favorite shades are Iris. I love Iris. I love Athena, and I love Harmonia. I love the theming of this palette. I mean, let's watch one more. Why not? Let's see. Oh, Calypso. I love Calypso. Calliopea's beautiful. I mean, this is such a good palette. So super impressed. I used this for like a week and a half straight. I'm just in love with this palette. I think it is so, so good. And if you have not tried Lunar Beauty, I highly suggest you giving it a try because I am just floored by the quality. All right, everybody. So those are my palette rankings for the month of January 2021. I hope this was fun for you. Let me know if you like this down below. I feel like this is going to be a good way to kind of keep me accountable and making sure I'm really kind of spreading the love around and really just diving into my collection, as well as some new palettes that I am trying out. So let me know what your rankings are for January down below. If you have done this video, let me know down below so I can check it out because I'm obsessed with eyeshadow palettes. If you have not gathered that yet, that's mainly what I talk about on my channel. Oh well, it is what it is. Again, keep an eye out for this look. I am not sure when it'll be up. I do have my declutter, my like yearly declutter series coming, which I didn't buy a lot of makeup last year, and I've had some pretty savage declutters the past like 2018, 2019. But I did go through and just kind of show some stuff. I had some pretty brutal declutters in some sections, but yeah, just keep an eye out for that. I'm probably a little bit low energy in those because I've just been fighting a cold, but those are coming, and I also have some just exciting things coming on the channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, thank you so much for hanging out and talking about makeup with me. Go check out Kelsey Brianna Jai and Karen Harris and Brit Clarke. I love all of them. They are fabulous. But guys, I hope you have an amazing day. Have a rocking week, and I will see you next time. Bye.